Hey friends, great to be able to communicate with you. I wish I could do this in person, but I'm happy to give you a little bit of an update today. Today is May 27th, 2020, and this is just an update video with a little bit of information based upon the elders meeting last night and other plans and discussions that have been taking place. If you haven't yet had the chance to watch my sermon from this past week, let me encourage you to pause the video and just watch the first 15 or so minutes of that video, because in that time I uh, give a little bit more of the vision of the short term and the long term. This video is really picking up on the threads of where that left off. So this video may not make very much sense if you haven't already seen that one. So you'd probably be helped. In fact, I think you'll certainly be helped if you pause this one and go just watch that portion of that video first, and that will explain some of these things that I'm talking about, like what the caravan is this Sunday, and then why we're thinking of short-term, long-term, and all that. And I also made some pastoral comments about just the importance of not judging other churches and those kinds of things. So I think that'll be helpful for us to consider as well. Um, Miss you all, love you all, praying for you all. We prayed for you last night, prayed for several of you particularly, and we continue to pray for you each day. If you have not yet received an elder call, you'll be receiving that sometime before Sunday. And so that'll be one way that we can stay in touch with you a little bit. And then I'll have a few other comments about other ways we can communicate. Okay, I'm going to share 2 prayers and 1 plan. I want to start with the prayers because that's sometimes helpful, and it's been helpful for me in this season to, it's so easy to get focused on the appearance and the human planning and just thinking about what we're going to do and just responding sort of emotionally in the moment to whatever we're facing. And there's been several times where something has challenged me to step back and say, Lord, what are you doing in this? And how can I walk through this prayerfully? One of the prayers that I've been praying just as I was at my desk this morning preparing to make this video for you guys, and it was so helpful to see this as a bigger, for everything else that we talk about and plan for and work towards, to be bathed in this kind of prayer. And it was the prayer, Lord, use this season to advance the gospel. And I find that helpful because it's easy just to look at all of the pain and all of the uncertainty and all of the anxiety and the difficulty of this season and just be focused on those things. And we don't want to minimize those things at all. At the same time, it is good to ask the Lord to be at work and consider how He's at work. And I do believe that sometimes it's in those times of tumult and difficulty and uncertainty that God is at work in certain special ways. And as I look back at church history, I see so many times where in the midst of either persecution or in the midst of some other difficulty, the gospel has gone forward and God has been at work. And that's not a reason for that persecution being good or something like that, but it's still a reason to pray, Lord. So that's the prayer, Lord, use this season to advance the gospel. Second prayer that's been on my heart is, Lord, use this season to draw us together as a church, to strengthen us as a church, to deepen us as a church. I mean, there's certain opportunities. That's how I'm trying to think of it. Are there any ways that this season is an opportunity for us to develop or deepen in some way? So that's another prayer. I know that the enemy would love to divide us. He would love to create distance. And I'm praying that rather than people feeling siloed off and disconnected, or rather than there being any divisions that occur, that throughout this season, God would be strengthening us like roots of a tree going deeper into the soil during the storm. And ultimately, when the weather is nice again, you look around and you say, wow, the tree is stronger. And that's how I'm praying for our church, that we would be united together and strengthened so that as we begin to emerge from this season, we'd be able to look back and see ways God has used it. I just wanted to mention those as a kind of blanket categories over everything else and invite you into those prayers with me. With regard to plans moving forward, the essential idea that we have arrived upon is this. We are putting together a committee, or we have put together a committee to help us in the planning process for relaunching our Sunday morning services. As I mentioned in the last video, we're trying to stay away from the language of opening church because church is more than just the Sunday morning service, but for relaunching the Sunday morning services. The reason for this is several-fold. One factor is that as we wait for final approval from the county, which is another level at which we're functioning now, we don't want to be caught on our heels at that point. We want to be proactive to start planning and thinking prior to that. So we're not at a point where we're able to pull the trigger on anything right as of this moment. We are waiting for county approval. But we have been given guidelines for how we can function. And so the thought is, let's not be caught on our heels when the county approval comes through. Let's start tackling this now. Let's start working at this now. But the thought also was, this is going to take a lot of work. This is not going to be a simple matter. I think last time we used the metaphor of this is not like turning a light back on, flicking the light switch. This is more like going from winter to spring. It's a process. And one of the reasons for that is the guidelines that have been given to us are extraordinarily detailed. They're not necessarily making it really easy for us to relaunch. And just take, just take a couple of the things they're encouraging us not to sing, because that's one of the ways that the virus can be transmitted. They're encouraging us to wear masks, and they're encouraging us to practice social distancing during the meeting. And then even after the meeting, we're not supposed to linger and hang out. So already we're realizing, number one, this isn't going to feel the exact same right off the bat. Things are going to feel a little different as we gradually get back to in-person gatherings, and that's good for us to be aware, so that when those times come, we're prepared for that. When we're also realizing, that's just a couple examples, but there's 13 pages of detailed instructions. We just want to do really well at thinking wisely about how to incorporate those plans. And so we felt that there would be value in involving other voices, people who have experience in the health profession, people who have other backgrounds and perspectives that can help us as elders come up with that plan so that then we're ready to go as we get county approval for relaunching. Now, when that county approval comes through, that doesn't mean that we're required to execute that plan immediately, but it just means that we're prepared and we can make the decision we want to make at that point. So that is what we are doing. I want to ask for you to pray for and encourage the committee and the elders as we work at this. By the way, in the meantime, of course, we'll continue to do weekly sermons, videos, as long as we need to do that. We're doing that, and we're also open to anything else we can do that would serve you. I'll say more about that in a moment. So I lost my train of thought, but it must have not been important. This happens when I preach too. Oh, that's right. I was gonna close with a sort of appeal to pray for the committee and the elders as they work at this. And to that end, as I conclude this video, I wanted to show you this picture, which is illustrating something from a principle in the context of a marriage relationship. And I think it might be helpful for us to consider. Some of you have seen this before, I'm sure. So as you look at the picture, try to get it centered here, you can see that there's a man trying to pull a woman up off of a cliff. And there's a snake inside that little crevice in the cliff, and there's a big boulder on top of the man. And importantly, neither the man cannot see the snake, and the woman cannot see the boulder. And if you have seen this principle illustrated before, you'll be familiar with this, but here's the illustration. It says, in relationships, especially in love relationships, it is fundamental to know how to change one's point of view and put oneself in the other's shoes. More often, however, one remains stuck in their own way of thinking and inflexible to another's way of seeing things. This drawing teaches us that in life and in love, it is fundamental to know how to see things from a different perspective, for example, from that of the partner. Here's the story behind the drawing. A man and a woman find themselves in a situation where the help of both is fundamental. It is necessary for the man to use all his strength to pull up his partner, but also that she grabs and clings to the recess in the cliff wall to facilitate her ascent. The woman, however, does not know that there is a huge boulder on the man's back that is crushing him. The man, on the other hand, does not know that in the recess in the cliff wall there is a snake that is biting the woman. The two continue to yell at each other. She says, "I'm going to fall. Why don't you try to pull up harder?" He says, "I can't do this. Why don't you try to climb a little more?" The moral of the drawing is very simple. In life, we interact with others without knowing about their problems, and others interact with us completely unaware of ours. But when there is love, family, or affection in the middle, you have to make an effort to always try to understand the other person and then to understand each other. This is the key to emerging unscathed from quarrels and becoming even stronger than before. As I think about that illustration, I'm reminded of several proverbs that talk to us about the importance of listening to others' perspectives. Proverbs 12:15 says, "The way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but a wise man listens to advice." Proverbs 15:32, "Whoever ignores instruction despises himself, but he who listens to reproof gains intelligence." Proverbs 13:1, "A wise man hears his father's instruction, but a scoffer does not listen to rebuke." So the reason that is really on my heart right now is, and I just wanted to make this appeal for us and kind of as a reminder and an appeal for us, is let's do two things. Let's first of all practice kindness to each other, because just as that man and woman in the illustration, guys, we don't know how others are suffering in this season. For example, those of us who are in the position of making decisions, we may not know how badly some of you are hurting, and how thirsty you are for fellowship, and what your needs are. And we want to try to listen. Those of you who are not in a position of making decisions, you may not understand the boulder that's crushing the back. You may not fully see all the complex range of factors, from legal to spiritual to practical to relational, that have to be considered in the decision-making process. So you might be thinking, why don't they just do this? And I think it will be helpful for us to really try to be, number one, kind to each other. Let's practice kindness. And number two, let's practice communication and listening. Let's over-communicate, and in that process, let's try to really consider how someone else is experiencing this, how someone else is feeling, how someone else is having needs, or having pain, or having struggle. So in all of that, one of the ways we want to create an opportunity for that is this Sunday night at 6 p.m., a quick Zoom check-in, all-church Zoom check-in, totally optional. No need to come if you don't want to do two things. First, just to say, how are you doing? Do you have any prayer requests? And we'll just lift each other up right in the moment. And secondly, to say, do you have any questions? And we just want to create every opportunity. We need to know how you're doing. What are you thinking? Tell us how we can care for you. That's part of the rationale behind the elder calls, and then also that's a second layer that we can try to connect via Zoom like that. So Sunday night at 6 p.m., we'll send out an invitation, and we'll have just a chance to check in. I'm anticipating probably a shorter meeting, very informal, just wanting to have a chance for communication. And of course, we're really looking forward to Sunday morning, the caravan. I explained that in the last video, and a letter will be going out. As soon as we have it, we'll send out the letter that has more detailed instructions for how we can prepare for that really exciting event Sunday morning. Okay, I think I've hit everything. Please have mercy on me for something I forgot or stated poorly. And please be praying for us as we work on our plans for moving forward. We will communicate as much as we can as soon as we can. For example, I can tell you that the committee will be meeting for the first time next week. And so then we'll follow up from that point. I believe next Monday. Okay, Love you all, praying for you. May the Lord be with you today. Thank you so much for your prayers, your support, your patience, and we'll look forward to interacting a little bit more in the days ahead. Bless you.